Hello and welcome to the Lens at 177, and today we have an interesting topic to discuss that is about street kids who have manned their ways of living and are now in school. And the person to thank is Ben Morrison. He's the co-founder of Inspire Pacific. Him and his team have worked with 17 children recently who have been uplifted from the streets, rehabilitated and put back into the school system. Ben, welcome to the program. First
Thank
of
you.
all, let me ask you, tell us about how you decided to work with these 17 children who you have successfully rehabilitated and put them in school.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I guess first of all, I'd just like to mention that these boys, they are just like any normal boys. So we don't really refer to them as street kids. And we see that they are just like normal boys who want to have a life and a future. But the thing that began this journey for me, I think, partially is I went on a little bit of the same journey, following the wrong crowd, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, doing things that I wasn't supposed to do as I was growing up. And even though I had good influence around me, so I think part of the influence is me trying to guide young people out of a life that I know that they shouldn't be in, and also just seeing the potential that young people have. We run a creative arts school, and we've seen the potential that is unlocked in our people, in young Fijians. We see it in the rugby field. We see that we have a lot of gifts and talents, and it just pains me, and it's something that bothers me to see all of that talent going to waste with children who are at risk of being marginalized in society.
And where did you pick up these children from?
So the boys that we work with, well, we started working with boys in the juvenile detention center. We were doing that for about 4 to 5 years. And what we realized was, even though we were working with them in the juvenile center, providing rehab programs to them, when they left, there was no support system, so they would end up coming back into the juvenile system, and eventually, if they didn't have any change or no one helped them, they would find their way up into the maximum prison. So the first group of boys we actually received, who came out of the juvenile detention center, who had served their sort of term there, and we tried to help them get back on their feet. And then we started sort of broadening the boys that we were working with, and we received referrals from the Ministry of Social Welfare. So we begin to receive boys off the street. Then eventually we just had people whose children had dropped out of school, whose boys had sort of no passion to get back into school anymore. I didn't know how to get back into school. They were referred to us, so we sort of had boys coming from different places.
So these kids from the streets who were brought to you, what was the status? What was their status when they came in?
Oh man, not good. And I would urge the public, if they have the opportunity, to try to go and have a look at where these boys on the streets are staying. Some of them are under the bridge, Nabukalo Creek towards the wharf. Their living condition is not right for any person, let alone child, to be living in. So when they came to us, they were in very bad shape, physically, mentally, emotionally, and we had to do a lot of work to help them find who they are and develop some level of self-esteem and confidence.
And what was the age bracket?
So the youngest boy we worked with, I believe, was around 11, 12, ranging from 11, 12 to the oldest 19, 20.
And did they say why they left their home?
A variety of reasons why children find their way onto the streets. I would like to add that all the boys that we have been working with all have a home. So the problem is not that they don't have a home. The challenge that they have is that there is sometimes a sense of negligence in the home, meaning parents aren't present, or they're busy at work, or there's too many people in that home. Most of the cases that we've seen are children who have come through a lot of family problems, or where the parents have marital problems, separation, divorce. We also have a lot of boys who come from single parent homes, mostly single moms. And then we have a few boys who never met their dads, and have sort of been passed around from home to home, living with their grandparents. So I would say, to summarize it, the reason they're on the streets is because of some sort of family issue or challenge that they're facing in the home.
And did you find if they were on drugs when they came from the streets?
Yes, all of them were doing some form of substance when they came to us in our program, ranging from glue sniffing to marijuana, and as we know now, the epidemic with ice on the streets. So yes, they were all on drugs.
And did they tell you where did they get the ice from, or where did they get the syringe from?
Most of the time it's from their friends, and I think that's the problem in the streets. Is, you find a group of boys who are looking for hope, and they find some sense of belonging in other street kids. And what ends up happening is, if some kid brings something, they introduce it, a few of them are doing it, eventually all of them find themselves doing drugs, and so they get caught up into peer pressure to do substance. So and the sources, obviously there's a lot of sources, not just on the street but the communities that they come from. We serve quite a number of boys who are coming from the G2 community, and there are quite a number of other communities around the Suva, especially close to the city boundaries, that according to police are red zone areas, have a lot of access to drugs, and these boys are being sometimes used to take drugs around, and their drugs is used as an exchange for a service that these boys do, whether it's burglary, breaking, entering, some kind of theft. So the boys are caught up in criminal activities in the community because of the neglect or the lack of attention that they have at home, coupled with the peer pressure of their friends. They find themselves in this whole drug crisis.
And when you're able to find out if they used one syringe amongst several boys or Bluetooth, did they practice that too also?
Yes. Some of the boys, they unfortunately were part of that. It's a very unfortunate habit, or something that's happening more with the boys in the community because of the desperation. And we always talk about the fact that the drugs is not the main problem. It is an issue, but the boys are turning to drugs because they're trying to solve a deeper problem. There's a problem, the lack of love, of care, of belonging, safety in their home. So they're trying to sort of numb this pain that they're going through, and they're turning to drugs.
And they're all clean now?
Yes. We've gone through that rehab program. They've been clean. We have some challenges when they go back into the community due to peer pressure. What we found was most of them before the program, they were taking drugs because of a lot of emotional influence, in the sense they were either angry, some form of emotional instability that pushed them into taking drugs. We did have a few who relapsed after, but the only reason was because it was sort of forced on them when they went back to the community. So there's still a lot of peer pressure in the community, but thankfully we were able to bring them out quickly and they were able to get clean again. There's still a lot of work in getting them completely on that process, but currently so far they have all been clean. But we realize now that we've dealt with some of the core issues of that was influencing them to take drugs. Now the main problem is the peer pressure and the influence in the community, especially to younger boys from the older boys who are now sort of forcing. And we've had several of our boys telling us that the older boys are forcing them to take these drugs. So yeah, that's the challenge we're trying to deal with now, is of actually, you could say, helping the community. Not so much just working with boys on the street, but where they're coming from, the community where the problem is, how do we help boys in that community, and not just boys, men who are behind drug use in the community, who also have their own problems as well.
Ben, we'll take a short break. Welcome back. Ben Morrison from Inspire Pacific is with me. Ben, can you share a personal experience with working with these children that impacted you and made you think, why am I doing this?
There's never a shortage of memorable moments with these boys, because we take these boys on a rehab camp where we actually eat, drink, sleep, live with these boys for 5 weeks or so. And it's in these weeks that we really build strong relationships with them, we build trust with them. Once we start building trust with these boys, then we begin to discover the child in them that comes alive. Because on the streets, they have to put on a mask, they have to look like big boys. And so they start pretending that they're strong, that they're macho, and then there's a lot of competition and a lot of trying to be somebody on the streets. They come into a rehab camp. We try to eliminate all of those negative factors, and we try to create a safe environment for them to be able to express who they are as children. And when they do that, we find kindness, we find the love that comes from them, and even we find the spark, we could say, in a child's eyes who has a dream or who has a passion, has an interest. And that's the thing that really motivates us, when we find these boys becoming passionate, becoming interested in something, loving what they're doing, coming to us, thanking us, and pouring love to us as facilitators. And that's the thing that really motivates us, and the thing that keeps moving us forward is when we begin to see the inner child coming out from their shell.
And how do you win their trust in the time you're with them?
A lot of it is around creating an environment of safety where they can feel safe. And safety is not just physical, in the sense that they are in no risk of physical harm or danger, but also emotionally, where they know that there's a safe space they can speak and not be judged, condemned, not be ridiculed by their peers, by even adults. So we try to create an environment of safety around them, and not just where they feel safe, but they feel supported. And this is a part of our program. Our curriculum is centered around 7 core concepts, focused around developing a sense of identity. And the first one, which is Beloved Son, focuses on really developing a sense of safety. And we see this with children. Children, when they're born, they really have no responsibility. All responsibility is the parents, to create safe environments so that they don't fall off the bed, so that they don't choke on their food. So a parent's responsibility is to create safety around the child. So when that happens, that trust continues to grow and build, and obviously the relationship strengthens in that, and the child develops with that. So That's some of the things that we try to do is create that environment of safety. And we've seen that once we do that, all children are able to trust again. Some takes a bit more time, depending on the trauma or the pain that they bring with them from their home environments. But eventually they all find their way to a place of trust. And once they can trust us, then we can begin to teach them, we can correct them, we can speak to them, but always from a place of safety, love, and support.
With this current drug pandemic, do you see things may get worse on the streets with children?
There's always that possibility that things can get worse. I think it will really depend on how active we become in being a part of the solution. And we fail to realize that we can actually do more than we think in terms of stopping this issue or not, or helping with the problem with young people and the drugs. Like I said, the drugs is not the problem. The problem is the environment at home, it's the support system, it's the places of safety, and we all can play a part in that. So yes, things can get worse, but we also have seen, and we've seen it proven, that there's a lot of potential and possibility of things getting better as well. If we can understand what we all need to do, how we can be part of the solution.
Government's plan to tackle the drug pandemic, do you think it's on the right track of what they're saying, what they will do?
This issue that we're having is somewhat a new problem. Drugs in itself is not a new problem because we've always had some form of drugs. But I think with ICE, the complexity that it brings in terms of its effects on the human body, but also how easy it is to get addicted to it, it presents a new challenge. And obviously, a new challenge takes some time to figure out the solution. So I think the government is doing its best to try to figure out what the solution is. But I think we can't really just wait on government or depend on government completely. I think we all have a part to play in being a part of the solution. And obviously, government will do its best to try to solve the problems. I mean, there's always more that can be done, and we're hopeful that our leaders in government can solve the problems if they can. But I think the important thing is that we ask ourselves as citizens how each of us can play our part, and also just thinking around more focus on how we can play our part in our own homes, because this problem, it reaches right into our backyards, so to speak. I'm sure we could look at our homes and see some youth in some level of connection to our families who's going through this challenge. So if we all did that, look at our own homes and see how we can help, I'm sure we would go a long way in solving the problems that we see.
Given what you have said, let me ask you, have you received any government assistance in the work you do?
We have in different ways. Government has been helping us as best as they can. Our biggest need in terms of financial support, however, we still are looking to government to support us in that manner. So yes and no, if I'm to be honest. But I realize there are a lot of limitations in government and how government can help. So, we are here for the long run, and we are here to support. So we've learned to be resourceful and do the best with what little that we have. We're blessed that we have a lot of other partners and donors in terms of corporates, such as organizations like Swai Shipping. And we're grateful for the New Caledonian government who is supporting us at some point. And we also have a few of our friends from overseas who are also supporting us as well. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot more opportunities, and hopefully, funding that can come from government to support the work that we're doing, not just for ourselves, but for the nation.
Are you able to tell me the dollar value of taking a child through the program you have? How much do you spend on a child to take him or her through that program you have?
Oh, it's hard to put a dollar value to that because it depends on a lot of different factors. So what we do with the child is we do an assessment with them as far as their needs are concerned. Some children have greater needs than others. Some children need more focused attention than others. So just give an example, we have a few children, when we did the assessment, we realized that they couldn't go back to the public school system because their learning abilities had been hampered. In some part, maybe to the drugs, but for most part, just because there wasn't that support for them. So we needed to get them into some kind of private education. But obviously, private education is much more expensive than the public school system. So yeah, it varies in that sense. Depending on the needs of the child, there are some children we've seen with greater health risks who need more attention, medical attention, and even there are some children who need medical services that are not available in the country right now. So we couldn't really put a specific dollar value right now because, as you know, if you have a child and they need something, you're willing to give everything to help that child become better or be healed or develop or grow. So I don't think I can give a specific answer at the moment.
Ben will take another short break.
No.
Welcome back, and Ben Morrison from Inspire Pacific is with me. Ben, let me ask you this question. What are some of the misconceptions Fijians have about children staying on the streets or people staying on the streets? What have you found?
Sure. I think one of the most common misconceptions that we have with children on the streets is that all children on the streets are bad. It's like this, we have a blanket label on all street kids to be bad children or negative. And I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, because we find out that for many of these kids on the street, it wasn't their choice to be on the streets. And we realized this because when we took them to the program and they started getting the support, they want to go to school. They want to have a future. They want to be around a good crowd of people. They just, unfortunately, were never exposed to that or didn't get the support they needed. So that's the first misconception, that all children are bad. I think the second misconception probably is that these children don't have homes, as I already mentioned. And the reality is for most, if not all, the children on the street, they have homes. And really the question is what is happening in their homes? Who is responsible for these children? No child that is born to this world wants or deserves to be treated in a way where they have to be forced to go onto the streets. So there's a lot of responsibility that needs to be taken from the home environment. I think going in connection to that, the third misconception is that all parents are bad. Sometimes we see the children where we say, oh, there's a problem at home, is on the street, so something must be wrong with the parents. But that's not the case either, because for many parents, the way they raise their children has been the way they've been raised. And a lot of the way they treat their children is simply something that's been passed on to them. So there's a lot of cycles we find when we work with these children. We could call it generational cycles, that at some point, someplace needs to be broken. And that's the work that needs to happen, is in helping break these sort of generational cycles, and also for the larger community, change some of these misconceptions that they are with children. I guess probably just the last one is that these children don't have any skills. We think that they are incapable of doing things, but we find that that's not the case. They're very talented, gifted in so many different ways. So yeah.
And has any child from your program been reunited with their family? Have they gone back to their house?
Yes, well actually all of our children that we work with, part of the program is to connect with their parents first. So we make the connection with their parents or their guardians, their homes. And what we do is we not only work with the children, but we also help the parents through our program. So the parents come to us weekly for trainings. We're just finishing a training that we're providing with parents on how to start and improve their business. Partnership with the Ministry of Trade. They're getting certificates in that, and then they're able to start their business. So we try to offer programs to parents to help them, to assist them. Because like I said, some of them never got the help that they needed in terms of raising children, of helping build a home for themselves. So yeah, we try to work with all the parents, and so in that throughout the program there's a development of the relationship between the child and the parents, and we're trying to empower not just the child but the parents. And the goal is that eventually the child will go back to the home. Some of our children, they have gone directly back to their homes. Some of our children, which we see whose homes are not ready based on our interactions with the parents, we have directed them to halfway home, and we're blessed that we have the Salvation Army, who is working closely with us, Kawai Home with Talatalamani, who have provided a safe space for these children, and we work very closely in terms of sharing the same program, creating the same environment, what we do and what they do in the home, so that the child finds a safe space. And then while that's happening, we're still working with the parents. Ultimately, every child needs to be in a home. We are of the belief that halfway homes are only transitional places. They are not to be permanent. So the child can only fully develop in a home environment. And when I say a home environment, where there are parent figures, where there is boundaries and rules, but most importantly, love, care, and support towards the child's needs and growth.
Are all the children you're working with from Itoke background? And if so, how do you assess what's happening in the Itoke community with children ending up on the streets?
Thank you, Anish. It's a good question. And to anyone that's going on the street, it'll be very obvious that the majority of the boys on the streets are Itoke. And all, as a matter of fact, the boys that are currently in our program, all of them are Itoke boys. When we ask the question of what is the problem, well, first of all, it's not a simple problem. Again, there's a lot of misconceptions. One of the misconceptions is the Itoke community is being irresponsible, you could say, to their own children. That's partially true. But I think that the bigger problem that we're facing, not just today, I think it's been a growing problem, is some of the, you could say, consequences of urbanization or modernization. As we progress in to become a first, or we're seen as the third world country, but as we progress to develop, the manner in which we're developing presents a challenge in the sense that it is different to the, you could say, cultural structures that we have, especially as in the Itoke community. And so I give you an example. Currently, the homeless situation that we have only exists in the cities. It's a city problem, I say. Why? Because in the villages, there is no such thing as homelessness. And so we ask the question, why is that the case? Why are homeless people only in the cities and none in the village? Well, it's because the village has its system, and it has its social structure, and it has its culture, which is contrary to the system, social structures, and culture within the urban or city area. Basically, in the village, it's more communal, more family-oriented. Everyone knows each other, and we're all trying to help each other grow. In the city, it's a sort of a free-for-all, where everyone is for themselves. And so you see someone on the street, you can walk past them. Whereas in the village, you wouldn't walk past anyone that doesn't have a home. So I think the challenge here is for the Itoke community to find what does it mean to be Itoke and carry forward our culture and values into the 21st century or into the modern era, you could say, without losing that, but also harnessing what benefits there are in being a developed country. So take the best of the village, the best of the city. How do we bring that together? I think that's the challenge that we have, not just for the Itoke community, but I think it's something that we have to answer as a whole, as Fijians. How do we help that transition? And it's not just the Itoke culture, there's a lot of different cultures that we have in Fiji. How do we work together and not lose our culture in a ever modernizing world, you could say? I think that's the challenge and the conversations that we need to have.
So when a child is finishing off your program and is about to go home, what do they come and tell you in order to thank you? What do they say?
Well, there's a lot of thank yous, a lot of hugs and kisses that these children have. But so our work doesn't just stop when they get into school. We actually continue monitoring program throughout the year in school, especially this first year for them. And what we're actually going to be doing as well is we're going to be entering into the schools to provide support programs, because we know there's a lot more boys in schools as well that need this support. So yeah, the relationship doesn't stop here. Eventually we would love to see these boys coming full circle to become alumni and actually run these programs for other boys on the street. That's our dream for these boys. But obviously we know that many of them would love for them as well to, become, we have some who are passionate to be accountants and lawyers and businessmen and all, everything that they aspire to be.
Talking about education, you have a degree in mathematics, you have a degree in software engineering, you have a degree in music production. So why do this job?
That's a good question, Dennis. I don't really know how to answer that question other than say I am listening to a voice inside of me, which is, I believe, the voice of God that has led me and guided me thus far. I don't really know why I've come on this path, but one thing that I have realized, it's been probably the most fulfilling journey for me. Fulfilling not just because I get to interact with people, I get to serve, I get to enjoy life, but also I begin to see the purpose of my degree in the way it can impact the community. So with the degree I've had, I've been able to dabble in business and develop some experience, and that has helped not just me but enabled me to help others. It's played a lot in terms of my ability to develop programs and all that, so I can see how it impacts my work. But again, like I said, it's one of those things that requires blind faith, but it's not blind because it's a faith in a God that I have a relationship with, and I'm hearing His voice and He's guiding me every day to serve. And all in all, it's been the most fulfilling journey so far, and I wouldn't trade it for any job in the world, I would say.
Ben Morrison, thank you for speaking with us, and all the best in the work you do.
No, no worries. Thank you.